Welcome back to the Sooner Pocket Podcast. We're here in the month of March, recording this on Tuesday, March 5th. I'm Sam here with Chris. Chris, we are right in the middle of a tight game for the OU men's basketball squad facing off in Norman against Cincinnati. At the time of this recording, we got, I think they're going to put a total of 3 seconds on the clock. OU up 67-66. What are your thoughts on this OU basketball team and where they go after the regular season's up?
They'll definitely go into the tournament. It's not like last year where it's kind of a who knows, and then as the season goes on, it's pretty clear that we won't make it. They're very clearly going to go to the tournament this year, and deservedly so. They're a better basketball team than they were last year. They've got a ways to go, but they're a much better team than they were last year. And I don't know, I could see them being like maybe an 8 or a 9 seed. I'm not sure if they'll make it past the first round, but if they do, good for them. The Porter Moser has that team going in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. I question what direction that is some days. I know we're gonna get in the tournament, but this game we had one of our worst starts of the season in this game. About 13 minutes into the game, we had 10 points. Yeah. So pretty rough, but hopefully
They also
during
almost
the
beat number one Houston the other day.
yeah, well, I tend to think that's the blind squirrel catching a nut once in a while. Um, but nonetheless, decent showing from Oklahoma this season. Not perfect, not really great either. Um, but not horrendous. So, like you said, we're going to get a tournament berth, probably a low single digit, high double digit seed somewhere in there. Um, Overall, something to at least be somewhat happy about during the football off season. Going back to that
Definitely.
one, the that you mentioned, the Houston game. Um, our offense just suddenly really clicked in that one. I mentioned in this game here tonight, um, 10 points, 7 minutes, 13 minutes into the game. Pretty poor offensive showing, and we had some weak offensive showings, but last week I think we put up the most first half points of any opponent Houston has faced this year. Um, so that was kind of interesting that it was us to do that, and pretty cool to see it happen.
Yeah, most definitely. I unfortunately wasn't able to see a lot of that game because my fiance and I were out on the town doing some things around Chicago. But no, I was keeping up with it. They really gave them everything they had. I don't know how many of our listeners out there watch the show Ted Lasso, but it honestly kind of reminded me of in season one, uh, AFC Richmond, Ted Lasso's team, which is just the joke of the league, going up against Manchester City, the returning champs, and for whatever reason, Manchester City, they scored one goal, but they just could not score on AFC Richmond. And eventually, with just like seconds left, AFC Richmond ties the game. And you're just like, holy crap, they're going to win. And then it just suddenly got yanked away. And that's kind of what that Houston game reminded me of. You ever watch Ted Lasso, Sam?
No, no, I haven't watched Ted Lasso. I'm just getting into The Sopranos actually. Um,
I've been
so I've,
thinking about watching that.
yeah, so I finally got I don't know if you'd call it a classic, but a show that a lot of people reference. One of
We just
the
started Breaking Bad.
one of the early day HBO shows.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma's taking this to the buzzer, and
Win
we've got
Colin
overtime.
Sooners. Overtime. What? You said we were
Overtime.
winning by a point.
We were. Cincinnati got free throws and only made
Oh,
one of them.
God.
So overtime tied at 67. But yeah, Sopranos, I just started. Um, I say just started. I'm in season 3, but it's a it's a pretty good show. Some of those old HBO shows, man, they're you can see why they were relegated to HBO because of the content and it's kind of whack to know that that was on a cable network, granted a premium cable network, but cable network nonetheless. Nowadays, you got to go to the front page of Netflix to find some of what you see on those old HBO shows.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I kind of Breaking Bad was on AMC, but even then I kind of get why it wasn't on CBS or Fox or anything. You mentioned OU going into overtime against Cincinnati. And speaking of overtime, speaking of extra playing time, the Oklahoma softball team 71 game win streak was snapped in extra innings by Miami of Ohio and not Miami, Louisiana. I mean Louisiana. And if you were watching that eighth inning, it showed that OU is at the end of the day human. I think that's about the sloppiest I have ever seen a Patty Gasso team play.
Yeah, I think it would be fair to say we were extremely human, um, especially at the shortstop position.
But a win streak is going to end at some point. We still have the best athletes in the country on that team. We still have an incredible team, and now there might be a lifted pressure from not having to worry about that win streak anymore. You know what happened the last time OU wasn't ranked number one in the country in softball?
I think we run ruled UCLA, didn't we?
Number one UCLA. We beat the holy crap out of them 14-0. So, and did you see who the new number one team is in college softball?
I did, despite Oklahoma getting more first place votes. Texas had more of the points there in the poll. So they landed that spot. When do we play Texas in softball?
I am going to look to find out, but you want to know something funny about the OU Texas series in softball?
Hmm.
If I remember correctly, OU has won 32 of the last 33 matchups against Texas. The last time we lost was in 2022, I believe. But 32 of the last 33 matchups have been won by the Sooners.
That is an impressive streak. Um, I guess not a streak, but an impressive set of wins.
Yeah, I get
Um,
what you mean. First weekend in April, April 5th, 6th, and 7th, we play Texas at Austin.
so here's one for you real quick, Chris. Cincinnati's leading scorer to this point in the game. His name is Jizzle James. Feel sorry for
I'm
that
not
kid if
going
he
to
went
say
to
anything
public
about that.
school. That had to have been
Remember,
a rough life.
remember that video that went viral of Danny Stutzman after the OU Texas game when it was the Brent Venables press conference, and you
Yes.
could just see Stutzman was trying not to laugh.
Yes. Yes, I'm sure if he meets up with this guy here, um, they'll share a laugh. But while we're talking about comical things, um, the news today that Arch Manning is so focused on his non-existent on-field product that he will not take the 125 seconds to review and sign the contract from EA that would give him $600, give him a free copy of the College Football 25 video game. I'm
I
I'm perplexed. All I can think is this is some kind of deal where he was maybe pushing to get some kind of an ambassador partnership with EA to promote the game, maybe get a little more cash through that, and EA wasn't on board.
He might have wanted to
Um,
be the cover athlete.
yeah, I don't know that he would have wanted that. He doesn't really have the position to make that, but he would have the position as a Manning, I think, to make a case to be a brand ambassador. And EA, for one reason or another, may not have wanted him. I just don't see why else he would decline. I saw some headline later in the day about how he wanted to wait till he was the starter. Um, that's that's hogwash.
He also said that he was going to wait until he was the starter to start accepting NIL deals. And we all know that he is currently one of the most lucrative names right now in college football. He's made more NIL money than just about any athlete in college sports. And that was after he said he wasn't going to take any NIL deals till he was a starter. So who knows? It could be. And he wouldn't even have to review the contract with all this NIL stuff. These kids have agents. his agent would review the contract, an attorney close to the family, because we all know the Mannings probably have an attorney. They could review the contract. He wouldn't have to do anything. He would just have to take 5 seconds to sign his name, and that's it. So I don't know if he found out that his rating was going to be like 62 and decided that he didn't want to be in there, and now it's just quarterback number 16 that'll have the rating of 62. I don't know if it's a publicity thing, because there's definitely more people talking about him not being in the game than there would be if he was in the game. He might, I wouldn't be surprised to see him announce in a week or two that he actually is going to be part of the game. And then there's other theories that he just doesn't really understand what's being asked of him, because they do all the animation. He doesn't have to be in every PlayStation and Xbox. He doesn't have to go do anything. So it's definitely strange. But I really enjoyed seeing Billy Bowman's comment
Yeah,
on Manning.
before it got deleted.
There were too many screenshots taken, so that's not going to be forgotten. But Billy, I have no reason to believe you're watching this right now, but if you are, keep up the good work.
Yeah, no doubt. The great thing about sports at OU, and this really is a testament to when people bring up which rivalry in college sports, especially college football, which rivalry is the premier rivalry. OU Texas never really ends. You look at softball, at the dispute right now that I'm sure is going on online between OU and Texas fans over who should really be in the number one spot in the softball poll. You look at the Arch Manning comments, like you mentioned there from Billy Bowman, and we have the basketball games as well. It's a testament to the product that Oklahoma and Texas deliver when they meet up. Always a heck of a game.
No doubt.
And I'm sure the comments from Billy Bowman about Arch Manning being an attention seeker, I'm sure that's going to be hanging up in the Texas locker rooms through a lot of the off season. And when Red River rivalry, boy, that's always been a hard one to say. Whenever that time of year comes, we're going to get to see who's seeking attention and who's creating attention.
And you mentioned the offseason, and that reminded me. This is one of the most unique off seasons OU's had since Brent Venables came in, because there's just so much that's different this year. Look at Brent Venables' first spring game, the first spring practice, what the team looked like. Our starting quarterback, without any shadow of a doubt, was Dillon Gabriel. Our offensive coordinator, Jeff Levy. Our defensive coordinator was, oh my gosh, I forgot his name, Ted Roof. Our defensive coordinator was Ted Roof. Our main wide receiver was Marvin Mims. A lot has changed in that regard. Going into this season, our number one quarterback is Jackson Arnold. Oh, and the number one running back was Eric Gray, with Javante Barnes as like a little maybe, depending on if he's healthy thing. But this year, Jackson Arnold is the quarterback. Seth Littrell is the offensive coordinator. Zach Alley, who we'll talk about here in a minute, is the new defensive coordinator. We have any number of people who could be a wide receiver one. The first name a lot of people think will be Andrew Anthony or Nick Anderson, but there's also the Purdue transfer Dion Burks. We've got Gavin Sawchuk is far away the number one running back going into the offseason. So new offensive system, new defensive system, new players. I know spring games don't tell us much. There's some fun stuff to watch in spring games, and I'm really looking forward to it. April 20th at 1 p.m.
Yeah, and we got the special teams coordinator out of San Diego State, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Another heck of an addition. I can't remember when we hired Zach Alley in relation to our last podcast, so I'm not sure if we really talked much about his hiring yet. Looks like a heck of a dude. He's coached some really solid defenses there at Jacksonville State, was it?
And And
good,
it
efficient defenses. Same for the special teams coordinator we got from San Diego State. Top 10 special teams group in the last few years.
And Zach Alley, he was hired in early January, so we talked about him a little bit, but we didn't really go into some of the stuff that really separates his defenses from what OU is used to over the past few years. And I've been looking at some of this. Man, he has a heck of a defense. So just look at a couple of these numbers from Jacksonville State compared to OU when it comes to the defense. The main thing I want you to know is the rushing defense. Jacksonville State's opponents only gained 79 first downs on the year on the ground. Oklahoma's opponents gained 95 first downs on the ground.
And
When
I'm
it
going to
comes
say
to running,
45 of
when it
those
comes to
95 came against BYU.
honestly, uh, do you know how many? If you had to guess how many rushing yards per attempt Jacksonville State allowed, what would you guess?
2.8.
Yeah, right on the money. 2.8. They allowed 2.8 yards per carry on the ground, where
What can
Oklahoma
I say?
allowed on average 3.9. They have a heck of a defense, and their secondary was also really good. Jacksonville State's opponents. Now, granted, Jacksonville State doesn't play the best teams, but if you have a good defensive coordinator, it doesn't matter what the talent is. The scheme is, if you know how to coach it, if you know how to scheme it, the player you are going to be able to dominate wherever you go because your scheme will translate. You're running against the same types of offenses, so you know how to defend them. It's just the players that you're going up against that are changing. Jacksonville State allowed 15 passing touchdowns all season. And let's see here, they intercepted 16 passes. So, like OU, they intercepted more passes than they allowed touchdown passes. Zach Alley runs one heck of a system. And I'm really excited to see what he does with Danny Stutzman, with Billy Bowman, with Gentry Williams. I'm really excited to see how his system that works so well at Jacksonville State comes to OU.
And the cool thing is we've got a lot of experience there on the defensive side coming back to help implement this and carry forward the new system with some of our younger guys, especially PJ
Without a doubt.
Adibaware, David Stone, um, all these guys that I think are going to be,
I can't wait for
fr
PJ.
yeah, they're going to be front and center stars um, for our defense. So I'm
Honestly.
excited.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Every year in the spring game, like I mentioned, there isn't really too much that you can get from it. I mean, it's a spring game, but there's always some things that'll stick out that will show up in the regular season. For example, Jackson Arnold last year, he ended the spring game with a touchdown pass to Gavin Freeman, and it was a beauty of a touchdown pass. Our rushing defense kind of took a dip towards the end of the season, but first half of the season, we had an elite rushing defense. And in the spring game, you could tell our guys were having trouble running the ball. What are some things you are looking for in the spring game this year?
I guess what I'm looking for in the spring game is just to see some of the guys and how they're conditioned, I guess, through the off season. How well, how quick are they moving out there on these plays? Um, how's their technique? Are they fundamentally sound? There's so little to really be gained scouting wise from a spring game, in my opinion. Um, coming from someone who's not a professional scout, professional reviewer, or anything like that of football technique, but um, for me, there's just not a whole lot to be gained from a spring game because it's very cagey. They're public. Um, you're not going to show your stuff necessarily in a spring game. I think the thing I'll
There,
be looking for through the season is, are we able to be the same team at the end of the year as we are at the beginning of the year? Because 2 seasons in a row now, we've been a dominant force in the front half of the season, and then we crap down our legs in the second half of the season. Um,
yeah.
so that's more where my focus is looking ahead to the season, because the spring games are fun. It's an awesome environment. It's cool to get to see some of the recruits, but there's so little from a scouting standpoint, I think, aside from seeing some of the, quick flash capabilities of some of the newer guys.
That what you just said is actually one of the main things I'm looking for, because I agree there's not much that you can tell from a spring game. I'm really looking to see what we're gonna. I'm really looking forward to see how we're gonna play when the season actually comes. But one thing that you can tell from a spring game is speed. I remember Caleb Williams' first spring game at OU. We were watching it together, and I remember he took off and ran one play, and I remember the first thing I said was, "Oh my gosh, this dude can fly." And I'm really excited to see what our speed looks like at wide receiver, because other than maybe one or really other than just one game, our wide receivers' hands were on it last year. And we were able to keep Emmett Jones, which was huge for us. One of the best wide receiver coaches in business. We know he's going to improve ball security and catching. Oklahoma State is really the one game that I can think of that we didn't have consistently good catching. But not only can Nick Anderson fly, Andrew Anthony will be coming back. Dion Burks from Purdue is a missile. He can just rocket up and down the field. We're going to see a little bit more of Jaquez Petaway, the redshirt. Well, I can't remember if he's a redshirt freshman or a true sophomore this year, but in high school he broke all types of track and field records with his speed. I want to see just how fast our team is, because a fast team is hard to beat.
Yeah, speed can do a whole lot for you. There's more room, I think, and more to be gained from toughness, and physical
100%.
ability, but speed is huge. Chris, I think that about wraps us for the night. Again, on the Sooner Pocket podcast, I'm Sam. We got Chris here. OU hopefully gonna be, like we said, a lower single digit seed, a higher double digit seed maybe, going into the tournament. So we'll be back with you closer to the NCAA tournament time. See what Oklahoma can do there in that regard, what Porter Moser and the boys can pull off. Go ahead, Chris.
And speaking of which, real quick, Porter Moser and the boys have officially beaten Cincinnati. Final score 74-71.
We'll see what Porter Moser and the boys can accomplish as they get closer to the tournament. And maybe we'll have some more spring game news, some more pre-spring game updates, news, general football updates. Let's see the softball team restart the 71 game streak, maybe get to 72 this time. But for Chris, I'm Sam, and good night, everybody.